Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Here we are in Russell Square again. Nice sunny day, very hot day, beautiful day, and it's our anniversary. 10 years today. How I made it, I'll never know. And how she made it, I'll never know. Okay, so we're going to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Where are we at?
Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 46.
Still in the passing away of Bhishma Dev, and we should be finishing it today. It's about 8 or 9 pages left in this chapter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
O descendant of Brigu, Shonaka, after performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishmadev, Maharaj Yudhishthira was momentarily overtaken with grief. Purport. Bhishmadev was not only a great family head of Maharaj Yudhishthira, but also he was a great philosopher and friend to him, his brothers and his mother. Since Maharaj Pandu, the father of the 5 brothers headed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, had died, Bhishmadev was the most affectionate grandfather of the Pandavas and caretaker of the widow daughter-in-law Kunti Devi. Although Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the elder uncle of Maharaj Yudhishthira, was there to look after them, his affection was more on the side of his 100 sons, headed by Duryodhana. Ultimately, a colossal clique was fabricated to deprive the 5 fatherless brothers of the rightful claim of the kingdom of Hastinapur. There was great intrigue common in imperial palaces, and the 5 brothers were exiled to the wilderness. But Bhishmadev was always a sincerely sympathetic well-wisher, grandfather, friend, and philosopher to Maharaj Yudhishthira, even up to the last moment of his life. He died very happily by seeing Maharaj Yudhishthira to the throne. Otherwise, he would have long ago quitted his material body. Instead of suffering agony over the undue sufferings of the Pandavas, he was simply waiting for the opportune moment, because he was sure and certain that the sons of Pandu would come out victorious in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as his lordship Sri Krishna was their protector. As a devotee of the Lord, he knew that the Lord's devotee cannot be vanquished at any time. Maharaj Yudhishthira was quite aware of all these good wishes of Bhishmadev, and therefore he must have been feeling the great separation. He was sorry for the separation of a great soul, and not for the material body which Bhishmadev relinquished. The funeral ceremony was a necessary duty, although Bhishmadev was a liberated soul. Since Bhishmadev was without issue, the eldest grandson, namely Maharaj Yudhishthira, was the rightful person to perform this ceremony. It was a great boon to Bhishmadev that an equally great son of the family undertook the last rites of a great man.
Text 47. All the great sages then glorified Shri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Krishna within their hearts. Purport. The devotees of the Lord are always in the heart of the Lord, and the Lord is always in the hearts of the devotees. That is the sweet relation between the Lord and his devotees, due to unalloyed love and devotion for the Lord. The devotees always see him within themselves, and the Lord also, although he has nothing to do and nothing to aspire to, is always busy in attending to the welfare of his devotees. For the ordinary living beings, the law of nature is there for all actions and reactions, but he is always anxious to put his devotees on the right path. The devotees therefore are under the direct care of the Lord, and the Lord also voluntarily puts himself under the care of his devotees only. So all the sages headed by Vyasadeva were devotees of the Lord, and therefore they chanted the Vedic hymns after the funeral ceremony just to please the Lord, who was present there personally. All the Vedic hymns are chanted to please Lord Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15. All the Vedas, Upanishads, Vedanta, etc. are seeking him only, and all hymns are for glorifying him only. The sages therefore performed the exact acts suitable for the purpose, and they happily departed for their respective hermitages.
Text 48. Thereafter Maharaj Yudhishthira at once went to his capital, Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt, Gandhari, who was an ascetic. Purport. Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, the father and the mother of Duryodhana and his brothers, were the elder uncle and aunt of Maharaj Yudhishthira. After the battle of Kurukshetra, a celebrated couple, having lost all their sons and grandsons, were under the care of Maharaj Yudhishthira. They were passing their days in great agony over such a heavy loss of life, and were practically living the life of ascetics. The death news of Bhishmadev, uncle of Dhritarashtra, was another great shock for the king and the queen, and therefore they required solace from Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira was conscious of his duty, and he at once hurried to the spot with Lord Krishna, and satisfied the bereaved Dhritarashtra with kind words for both himself and the Lord also.
Gandhari was a powerful ascetic. Although she was living the life of a faithful wife and kind mother. It is said that Gandhari also voluntarily blindfolded her eyes because of the blindness of her husband. The wife's duty is to follow the husband cent per cent. And Gandhari was so true to her husband that she followed him even in his perpetual blindness. Therefore, in her actions, she was a great ascetic. Besides that, the shock she suffered because of the wholesale killing of her 100 sons and her grandsons was also certainly too much for a woman. But she suffered all this just like an ascetic. Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishmadev in character.
Wow.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
They are both remarkable personalities in the Mahabharata.
Text 49. After this, the great religious king Maharaj Yudhishthira executed the royal power in the kingdom, strictly according to the codes and royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Sri Krishna. Text 4. Maharaj Yudhishthira was not a mere tax collector. He was always conscious of his duty as a king, which is no less than that of a father or spiritual master. The king is to see to the welfare of the citizens from all angles of social, political, economic and spiritual upliftment. The king must know that human life is meant for liberating the encaged soul from the bondage of material conditions, and therefore his duty is to see that the citizens are properly looked after to attain this higher stage of perfection.
Maharaj Yudhishthira followed these principles strictly, as will be seen from the next chapter. Not only did he follow the principles, but he also got approval from his old uncle, who was experienced in political affairs. And that was also confirmed by Lord Krishna, the speaker of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita.
Maharaj Yudhishthira is the ideal monarch, and monarchy under a trained king like Maharaj Yudhishthira is by far the most superior form of government, superior to modern republics or governments of the people by the people. The mass of people, especially in this age of Kali, are all born Shudras, basically low-born, ill-trained, unfortunate, and badly associated. They themselves do not know the highest perfectional aim of life. Therefore, votes cast by them actually have no value. And thus persons elected by such irresponsible votes cannot be responsible representatives like Maharaj Yudhishthira.
Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Passing Away of Bhishmadev in the Presence of Lord Krishna. Okay, so now we're moving on to chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. Text number 1. Shaunaka Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Maharaj Yudhishthira, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. Purport. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the greatest of all men of religion. Thus he was not at all inclined to fight with his cousins for the sake of enjoying the kingdom. He fought for the right cause because the kingdom of Hastinapur was his rightful inheritance, and his cousins wanted to usurp it for themselves. He fought, therefore, for the right cause under the guidance of Lord Krishna, but he could not enjoy the results of his victory because his cousins were all killed in the fight. He therefore ruled over the kingdom as a matter of duty, assisted by his younger brothers. The inquiry was important for Shaunaka Rishi. He wanted to know about the behavior of Maharaj Yudhisthira when he was at ease to enjoy the kingdom.
Text 2. Sutta Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased after re-establishing Maharaj Yudhisthira in his own kingdom and after restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. Purport. This world is compared to a forest fire caused by the cohesion of bamboo bushes. Such a forest fire takes place automatically, for bamboo cohesion occurs without external cause. Similarly, in the material world, the wrath of those who want to lord it over material nature interacts and the fire of war takes place, exhausting the unwanted population. Such fires or wars take place and the Lord has nothing to do with them, but because he wants to maintain the creation, he desires a mass of people to follow the right path of self-realization, which enables the living beings to enter into the kingdom of God. The Lord wants the suffering human beings to come back to him and cease to suffer the threefold material pangs. The whole plan of creation is made in that way. And one who does not come to his senses suffers in the material world by pangs inflicted by the illusory energy of the Lord. The Lord therefore wants his bona fide representative to rule the world. Lord Sri Krishna descended to establish this sort of regime and to kill the unwanted persons who have nothing to do with his plan. The battle of Kurukshetra was fought according to the plan of the Lord, so the undesirable persons could get out of the world, and a peaceful kingdom under his devotee could be established. The Lord was therefore fully satisfied when King Yudhisthira was on the throne, and the seedling of the dynasty of Kuru in the person of Maharaj Parikshit was saved. Thank you, Krish.
We can't either. 10.3. Maharaj Yudhisthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishmadev and Lord Shri Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge, because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brothers. Purport. The modern English law of primogeniture. Primogeniture, what does that mean? I have to look that up. Primogenitor is a noun, the state of being a firstborn child. Primogenitor.
Yeah, because it goes on to explain.
Is it what?
Well, it says, the law of inheritance by the firstborn. So it explains it.
Yeah, or the law of inheritance by the firstborn. Was also prevalent in those days when Maharaj Yudhisthira ruled the earth and seas. In those days, the king of Hastinapur, now part of New Delhi, was the emperor of the world, including the seas, up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Maharaj Yudhisthira's younger brothers were acting as his ministers and commanders of state, and there was full cooperation between the perfectly religious brothers of the king. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal king or representative of Lord Shri Krishna to rule over the kingdom of earth, and was comparable to King Indra, the representative ruler of the heavenly planets. The demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varun, and Vayu are representative kings of different planets of the universe, and similarly, Maharaj Yudhisthira was also one of them, ruling over the kingdom of the earth. Maharaj Yudhisthira was not a typically unenlightened political leader of modern democracy. Maharaj Yudhisthira was instructed by Bhishma Dev and the infallible Lord also, and therefore he had full knowledge of everything in perfection.
The modern elected executive head of a state is just like a puppet because he has no kingly power. Even if he is enlightened like Maharaj Yudhisthira, he cannot do anything out of his own goodwill due to his constitutional position. Therefore, there are so many states over the earth quarrelling because of ideological differences or other selfish motives. But a king like Maharaj Yudhisthira had no ideology of his own. He had but to follow the instructions of the infallible Lord and the Lord's representative and the authorized agent Bhishmadev. It is instructed in the Sastras that one should follow the great authority and the infallible Lord without any personal motive and manufactured ideology. Therefore, it was possible for Maharaj Yudhisthira to rule the whole world, including the seas, because the principles were infallible and universally applicable to everyone. The conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if we can follow the infallible authority. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and the infallible can create a program which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world. It is the person who rules and not the personal government.
Impersonal.
And not the impersonal government. If the person is perfect, the government is perfect. If the person is the fool, the government is a fool's paradise. That is the law of nature. There are so many stories of imperfect kings or executive heads. Therefore, the executive head must be a trained person like Maharaj Yudhisthira, and he must have the full autocratic power to rule over the world. The conception of a world state can take shape only under the regime of a perfect king like Maharaj Yudhisthira. The world was happy in those days because there were kings like Maharaj Yudhisthira to rule over the world.
Text 4. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. Purport. The basic principle of economic development is centered on land and cows. The necessities of human society are food, grains, fruits, milk, minerals, clothing, wood, etc. One requires all these items to fulfill the material needs of the body. Certainly one does not require flesh and fish or iron tools and machinery. During the regime of Maharaj Yudhisthira, all over the world there were regulated rainfalls. Rainfalls are not in the control of the human being. The heavenly king Indradev is the controller of rains, and he is the servant of the Lord. When the Lord is obeyed by the king and the people under the king's administration, there are regulated rains from the horizon, and these rains are the cause of all varieties of production on the land. Not only do regulated rains help ample production of grains and fruits, but when they combine with astronomical influences, there is ample production of valuable stones and pearls. Grains and vegetables can sumptuously feed a man and animals, and a fatty cow delivers enough milk to supply a man sumptuously with vigor and vitality. If there is enough milk, enough grains, enough fruit, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, then why do people need cinemas, houses of prostitution, slaughterhouses, etc.? What is the need of an artificial, luxurious life of cinema, cars, radio, flesh, and hotels? Has this civilization produced anything but quarreling individually and nationally? Has this civilization enhanced the cause of equality and fraternity by sending thousands of men into hellish factories and the war fields at the whims of a particular man? Pretty heavy, brother.
It is said here that the cows used to moisten the pasturing land with milk because their milk bags are fatty and the animals were joyful. Do they not require, therefore, proper protection for a joyful life by being fed with a sufficient quantity of grass in the field? Why should men kill cows for their selfish purposes? Why should men not be satisfied with grains, fruits, and milk which combined together can produce hundreds and thousands of palatable dishes. Why are there slaughterhouses all over the world to kill innocent animals? Maharaj Parikshit, grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira, while touring his vast kingdom, saw a black man attempting to kill a cow. The king at once arrested the butcher and chastised him sufficiently. Should not a king or executive head protect the lives of the poor animals who are unable to defend themselves? Is this humanity? Are not the animals of a country citizens also? Then why are they allowed to be butchered in organized slaughterhouses? Are these the signs of equality, fraternity, and non-violence?
Therefore, in contrast with modern advanced civilized form of government, an autocracy like Maharaj Yudhishthira's is by far superior to a so-called democracy, in which animals are killed and a man less than an animal is allowed to cast votes for another less than animal man.
We are all creatures of material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord himself is the seed-giving father, and material nature is the mother of all living beings in all shapes. Thus, Mother Material Nature has enough foodstuff both for animals and for men. By the grace of the Father Almighty Sri Krishna, the human being is the elder brother of all other living beings. He is endowed with intelligence more powerful than animals for realizing the course of nature and the indications of the Almighty Father. Human civilization should depend on the production of material nature, without artificially attempting economic development to turn the world into a chaos of artificial greed and power only for the purpose of artificial luxuries and sense gratification. This is but the life of dogs and hogs.
Text 5. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. Since Maharaj Yudhishthira was under the protection of the Ajita, the infallible Lord, as above mentioned, the properties of the Lord, namely the rivers, oceans, hills, forests, etc., were all pleased, and they used to supply their respective quota of taxes to the king. Were all pleased, and they used to, namely the rivers, oceans, hills, forests, etc., were all pleased, and they used to supply their respective quota of taxes to the king. The secret of success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord. Without his sanction, nothing can be possible. To make economic development by our own endeavors on the strength of tools and machinery is not all. The sanction of the Supreme Lord must be there. Otherwise, despite all instrumental arrangements, everything will be unsuccessful. The ultimate cause of success is the Deva, the Supreme. Kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira knew perfectly well that the king is the agent of the Supreme Lord to look after the welfare of the mass of people. Actually, the state belongs to the Supreme Lord. The rivers, oceans, forests, hills, drugs, etc. are not creations of man. They are all creations of the Supreme Lord, and the living being is allowed to make use of the property of the Lord for the service of the Lord. Today's slogan is that everything is for the people, and therefore the government is for the people and by the people.
Hi, Tinsley.
Hey! But to produce a new species of humanity at the present moment on the basis of God consciousness and perfection of human life, the ideology of godly communism, the world has to again follow in the footsteps of kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira or Parikshit. There is enough of everything by the will of the Lord, and we can make proper use of things to live comfortably without enmity between man and man, or man and animal, or man and nature. The control of the Lord is everywhere, and if the Lord is pleased, every part of nature will be pleased. The river will flow profusely to fertilize the land. The oceans will supply sufficient quantities of minerals, pearls, and jewels. The forest will supply sufficient wood, drugs, and vegetables, and the seasonal changes will effectively help produce fruits and flowers in profuse quantity. The artificial way of living depending on factories and tools can render so-called happiness only to a limited number at the cost of millions. Since the energy of the mass of people is engaged in factory production, the natural products are being hampered, and for this the mass is unhappy. Without being educated properly, the mass of people are following in the footsteps of the vested interests by exploiting natural reserves, and therefore there is acute competition between individual and nation and nation. There is no control by the trained agent of the Lord. We must look into the defects of modern civilization by comparison here, and should follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Yudhisthira to cleanse man and wipe out anachronisms. You know what anachronisms are?
No.
Let's see, anachronisms. A thing belonging or appropriate to a period other than that which it exists, especially a thing that is conspicuously old-fashioned. All right, so I think we'll finish there. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. And hello, Tinsley. Nice to see you. Hope you're having fun in Florida.
Yeah.
And feels like Florida here in London at the moment. So we'll see you guys next time. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.